Back in 2005, Steven Spielberg gifted to the world his modern rendition of the timeless sci-fi classic, War of the Worlds. Starring Scientology's GigaChad, Tom Cruise, we got to see a man with his estranged family go on a harrowing journey across the Northeast, as they struggled to avoid the wrath of the alien tripods. That is, until the supremely technologically advanced interplanetary invaders got sent to the Shadow Realm by rudimentary microbiology. Now, apparently this specific adaptation of H.G. Wells' historic novel is so popular that people are actually excited for an indie game based on this very film. A game that will, at some point this century, be released. Hopefully. That being said, given that the game in question is a survival game, and given that I tend to cover apocalyptic scenarios and disasters from the perspective of survival, I figured I'd cover this early 2000s masterpiece in my Could You Survive series. As such, I'll be breaking down the aliens, their tripods, and even the scale of their extermination campaign, all in order to determine your odds of survival. And at the very end of this thought experiment, I'll give you my thoughts on how to properly conduct a planetary eradication campaign. So sit back and relax, because this is going to be a fun one. As per usual, in order to reasonably estimate your odds of survival, we're going to have to first analyze the primary threat to your existence in this scenario, being the little green men from Mars, or rather the gray tripedal weirdos from some undisclosed planet, as these aliens aren't actually Martian.
Well, Martians is not mentioned in my film because my aliens don't come from Mars.
We really don't know much about these creatures, aside from the fact that they're clearly from an intelligent spacefaring civilization. Although, if we're being honest here, they can't be that smart considering these morons felt it would be a good idea to walk around naked, without any PPE, on the surface of an alien planet. Be that as it may, they seem to be somewhat frail. However, I can't really confirm if this is true or not. All I can really say is that they don't look very imposing. Speaking of being imposing or intimidating, these invaders from outer space pilot these massive fighting machines, known to all of us as the tripods. Towering 50 meters or 150 feet into the sky, the tripods come equipped with devastatingly potent heat rays which deatomize organic materials upon contact. Nothing, and I mean nothing, is shown to be capable of tanking these death lasers. But not only do these genocidal freaks have an unstoppable offense, they also have an impregnable defense. That's right, these assholes have force fields which render all exterior attacks null and void. Now, despite possessing this impressive arsenal, it is possible to circumvent their defenses by striking them from within their mechs, something Ray manages to do when he got caught in the movie. Though let's be real here, this opportunity only really presented itself to Ray because the aliens were busy collecting people so that they could then turn them into smoothies. Speaking of collecting people like a bunch of Funko Pops, the extraterrestrial war machines came equipped with hentai tentacles capable of grabbing and lifting heavy objects. They even have cybernetic appendages which come with built-in cameras. The aliens would then stick one of these into a structure like they were conducting a colonoscopy, and then they would use it to locate humans who were hiding in the shadows like a bunch of scared rodents. Yet despite all of their high-tech gear, they somehow forgot to equip thermal optics, something we've had since the 1920s. I mean, look at these archaic spotlights. Clearly they haven't optimized their tech tree. But I'll tell you what they did unlock on said tech tree. The ability to make these terrifying tripedal metal death mechs amphibious. That's right, they'll literally come after you in the fucking water, like some juiced up submarine from hell. But what's even crazier than all of the aforementioned oddities of the alien military forces is how they actually deployed their forces. As it turns out, these crazy prigs had planted their tripods deep into the Earth's crust centuries ago. Now, does that make any sense? Fuck no. If they embedded them that long ago, why didn't they just colonize the planet then? Catch my drift? This is just stupid. Nevertheless, these extraterrestrial warriors fly into these machines under the cover of an artificial lightning storm. And get this, said lightning storm causes a widespread electromagnetic pulse. This EMP pretty much fries all electronics within a large radius. And they clearly also like to announce their arrival, seemingly getting a hard-on from scaring the literal shit out of people when they blast their bone-chilling horns. So, we don't really get that much information about the true scale of the alien invasion. But we do get a few glimpses of the global catastrophe that is the War of the Worlds. Early on in the film, we're shown a news broadcast detailing how freakish lightning storms have left millions in the Ukraine without power, clearly foreshadowing what Ray would be experiencing during his encounter with the artificial EMP-inducing lightning storms. Later on, we get to meet a field reporter for CBS News, who goes on to explain that the cities of New York, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, Chicago, and even London have, quote, gone dark. Further adding that once the tripods arrive in an area, news seemingly stops coming out of those locations, thus implying that those cities were likely decimated. This tidbit of information leads us to deduce that the aliens likely made landfall across the globe at major population centers. But since Boston wasn't completely wiped out by the end of the movie, we can also reasonably deduce that not every major city was targeted on day one. As such, we can reasonably conclude that most people living near a major city would likely be within the path of the tripod's war march. And as we can clearly see with the naked eye, each city was assaulted by multiple tripods. We also know that the aliens are spreading a strange red weed across the countryside, likely conducting some form of terraforming by introducing a foreign plant-like species to Earth's ecosystem, which makes total sense considering that the narration explicitly tells us that these aliens have been observing our planet with envious eyes. They were clearly aiming to evict us from our planet so that they themselves could move in. But, interestingly enough, this advanced interplanetary species had zero understanding of germ theory, thus causing them to all die off slowly after 4 to 5 days. After all, Ray takes his daughter and son from Bayonne, New Jersey, all the way to Boston, Massachusetts, a journey of which the majority was taken by foot, hence allowing us to estimate that the events of the film likely took place over the course of just 4 to 5 days. Y'all gotta remember, he basically spent a night at his ex-wife's house and then one night in the basement of this psycho's home. So, all in all, the invasion, while being worldwide, was rather short-lived. So, given all of the information we've covered thus far, could you realistically survive the events depicted in Spielberg's War of the Worlds? Well, here's my honest thoughts on the matter. If you're at Ground Zero, being basically any major city where the aliens make landfall, and if you're within 200 square miles of said location, you're likely gonna get cooked to the point of being cremated. But clearly, not all major cities were attacked at once, as Boston realistically should have been flattened if that was indeed the case. As such, you may be lucky enough not to be within the sights of the initial alien attack. That being said, there's nothing you can do if you're actually within the path of the tripods, aside from just running away and trying to stay one step ahead of the alien campaign. And you best believe that this would be no easy task, as every epicenter of this alien invasion would have been hit with multiple EMP blasts. Communications would be nearly non-existent, and all electronics not protected by proper insulation, or a Faraday cage, would have been fried, which includes most modern cars, avionics, water treatment and distribution systems, and the power grid itself. If you're flying over the enemy, they'll shoot you down. That's if the EMP didn't do that already. Driving will pose many risks, as desperate survivors will want your functioning vehicle. But it's far more likely that your car wouldn't even work, so you'll end up having to flee on foot while these machines pursue you. Being in a boat is clearly not safe either, and if you choose to hide, they will probably find you, eventually. Or they may accidentally crush you or light your safe house on fire. Hell, they might just destroy the entire structure. So clearly, staying put in one location would not be a viable option in most situations. You'd also have to worry about obtaining potable water, as the invasion will last longer than you can go without meeting your hydration needs. If you live in volatile environments where you'd be exposed to extreme heat or frigid conditions, the collapse of the power grid could severely exacerbate your hydration needs or leave you dying in your sleep due to freezing conditions. There is also the rare chance that your location might get nuked, as some nations may choose to utilize nuclear weaponry against the extraterrestrial invaders. Suffice it to say, being within the affected areas of this invasion would render your odds of survival to be rather low. With that in mind, it's entirely possible that you might never face any direct danger. If you live in a remote area or in regions the aliens happen to overlook, you could survive the invasion as a distant observer. But that doesn't mean you'd survive what comes next. An interplanetary war of this scale would almost certainly trigger the collapse of global supply chains and economic systems. International trade would grind to a halt, manufacturing centers would shut down, and communications networks would be crippled or outright obliterated. Even regions spared from physical devastation would face severe economic shockwaves. This wouldn't just be a global recession. It would be a systemic collapse, reducing many nations to localized, pre-industrial economies driven purely by survival. The aftermath would likely bring mass famine, widespread civil unrest, outbreaks of civil and international wars over dwindling resources, and the total breakdown of public health infrastructure. Pandemics, suicides, and widespread psychological trauma would be inevitable. And as the chaos deepens, a massive global refugee crisis would unfold, with millions fleeing the worst-hit areas in a desperate search for safer, more stable ground, thus further exacerbating the aforementioned problems. All things being considered, the aftermath of the extraterrestrial invasion might actually kill more people than the aliens themselves, hence rendering your odds of survival to be lower than you might expect. Nevertheless, this is not an extinction event, and humanity will inevitably bounce back from this life-altering disaster. But humanity will never be the same after this, as the question of whether or not we're alone in this vast universe would have been answered in the worst way possible. And I could certainly see humanity opting to keep their presence in the stars hidden for many centuries to come, as a direct result of this alien invasion. Okay, so here's that bonus segment I mentioned earlier in my introduction to this video. If I was planning an alien invasion campaign, which aimed to eradicate all of humanity, I can confidently say that I'd take a very different approach than the aliens did in the movie. For starters, I'd bring multiple low-orbit spacecraft. These spaceships would first create a worldwide electromagnetic pulse to completely cripple humanity's ability to mount any meaningful resistance. Then I'd have these ships launch large chunks of metal, probably all being the size of small meteors, into the oceans not far off the coastlines of every major continent. Roughly 15% of the human race lives near the coastline, hence creating multiple mega tsunamis across the globe would greatly aid in my effort to exterminate humanity. In one swift attack, roughly 1/6 of the human race would be wiped away by massive walls of water. That's roughly 1.3 billion drowned in a few hours. From there, I'd send unmanned drones down to collect human specimens. I'd then study the biology of humanity and their ecosystems, all in order to design a specialized airborne virus that only kills people. I would then aerosolize this pathogen and spread it throughout the atmosphere, while also spreading it through the vectors of birds and mosquitoes. And after a year and some change, most of humanity would be dead, at which point I'd deploy my autonomous tripods and aerial drones. They would go on to secure a few areas for the installment of terraforming centers. And within a few years, humanity would likely go extinct as the planet's ecosystem is changed to a state of affairs that does not allow for human survival but does allow for colonization. This is, no doubt, very boring, but it is surgical in its precision and also highly effective and efficient. And that's why humanity would never survive an alien genocide campaign to begin with, at least not one that's conducted by intelligent life. Anyways, if you like this sort of content, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell as well, that way you may be notified when I publish a new video. And also remember that you may opine anytime if you feel so inclined, down in the comments section. I'm Captain Gold, and I hope to see you in my next Gold Standard video.